If you find yourself being somebody who has a hard time making a decision, or you have a hard time making the best decision for yourself, you kind of second guess it a lot, you may have other people choose, or even if you're somebody who keeps telling yourself that tomorrow you're going to start that project, you're going to go to the gym, you're going to clean your room, and then tomorrow turns into next week, the week after that, and then eventually it's a month later and you've never started what you told yourself you were going to start a month ago. You may have also experienced betrayal, somebody gaslighting you, somebody controlling you, maybe being manipulated, or maybe even being just shamed for speaking your truth and living in your truth. If any of these aligned with you, or anything deeper than these layers, because I feel like this may have just scratched the surface, you may be dealing with subconsciously not having self trust. Hey everyone, it is Willow. Welcome back. I want to talk to you guys today in this video about self trust, specifically how to trust yourself, how you can subconsciously peel back those layers, what it looks like to have self trust, and why self trust is so important. There's a few different ways to look at self trust because there's so many routes to get there. It falls underneath this huge umbrella of just emotional safety, confidence, discernment, having boundaries. And because there's so many ways to get there, I feel like as soon as you start working at one area, you just, it's like a domino effect. You kind of start to just fall in line with it and eventually get to where you need to. I'm a personal believer that you can excel growth at a faster pace if you are continuously taking in lessons, applying them, and not allowing yourself to repeat certain cycles and patterns and toxic behaviors. Because the more that you just kind of like learn your lesson and go with it, right? It's like you're being obedient to what God is telling you to do and really just listening to Him and following His word. It becomes so much easier to like expand yourself, your mind, your body, and your spirit in so many new ways. So, self trust and understanding what that looks like in certain areas, but also maybe trying to adapt it if you haven't already, is going to help you so much during this journey. My whole concept of self trust, I think, started early. And I didn't know it at the time, but when I was in high school, later years of high school, beginning early years of college, I really started my like spiritual journey. I grew up Catholic. I've always had a relationship with God, but I never really truly walked in Christ. And at that time of later high school, early college, a lot of new age spirituality stuff was starting to happen, and I fell victim to it. I fell victim, you guys. I fell victim, yes, to the crystals and to the tarot cards and all of the new age spirituality things. But learning about the spiritual realm and spirituality in general was definitely something that interested me and it had me peak interest to even diving into a lot of that new age stuff. Like that was the main reason why I even got into it, was because I found out about spiritual realm. I found out about spirituality and how we coexist with spiritual beings, and we are spiritual beings, and I loved it so much. It was like a, I don't know, I just loved it. I just like wanted to lay in bed and scroll on TikTok and just watch a whole bunch of like spirituality stuff, which is kind of weird to think about now because that just goes to show how long I've been on TikTok. I'm just thinking about that. Like, wow, I've been on TikTok for that long is kind of crazy. I started getting into spirituality, and one thing a lot of people talked about, because at this time I started meditating, I started doing a lot of practices that would try to intune me with my spirit. And a constant conversation that was always being held in that space was your intuition and how important it is to listen to your intuition, what your intuition feels like, all of the amazing things. Now, I feel like when you're learning about intuition, it can seem so easy. Like you're like, okay, it's a inner knowing or it's like a gut feeling, right? That's what you think of it as. But it's so much harder to practice it. Like, I remember at that time being like, okay, I'm gonna try to listen to my intuition. What is my intuition telling me? Because my anxiousness is overpowering it, and I don't know if I'm making the right decision. I don't know what's going on. So it was a lot harder to practice than I took it on to be through all the information that I learned. However, I really wanted to try to practice it more. You're trying to listen to yourself and what your body is telling you, but you're still being overpowered by some thoughts and some anxious feelings. It is not the easiest to rely on because when you don't trust yourself, how are you going to trust the fact that you're making the right decision by leaning on your intuition if you don't know what that feels like? There are some certain examples that I can think of that like automatically click in my head where I'm like, yeah, I didn't go do X, Y, and Z because at that time my intuition was screaming at me like just don't do it, and I didn't do it. And it wasn't like an anxious feeling. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just like a split second decision that I made that, yeah, I'm not going to do this. And then there's other moments where I do think I'm making the right decision and it ends up backfiring. I've ignored the red flags and I've gotten myself into a situation that is now going to have to be a learned lesson. So as I was navigating this and figuring this out and along my journey of life, I feel like that's when it first started. But that first initiative motive to really start leaning more into my intuition unraveled so many other areas in my life where self-trust started to show up. I started to want to do better for my health physically, going to the gym. I made a commitment to myself to the gym. Habits, like there were certain habits that I had that were just unhealthy. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stop doing this, or I'm going to stop engaging in this type of mentality or this behavior. And it was like little by little by little. I definitely was having growth and change and evolution throughout the years, but seeing trusts for myself unfold over a long period of time was really interesting. Because when I was thinking about this concept of self trust, I was thinking about how some of the most confident people and some of the people who are willing to take the most risk in life have so much self trust. They're like, I trust myself to do this. Like, I don't, I can go and live this life or I can go and chase after this dream because I trust myself that I'm going to get to the end point. And yes, there's underlying belief in there. There's faith, the knowing, the inner knowing that they're going to accomplish whatever they need to accomplish. But all in that tied together because like I was saying earlier, how self-trust is like this umbrella and it like sits in within it sits like emotional security and confidence and boundaries and discernment. It's like everything wrapped together in this nice little package is self-trust. At the end of the day, when you are healing and evolving and growing and raising your vibration and your frequency, you start to come into alignment with so many other things that just make sense. Like at that time, if you would have started in a different area, it wouldn't have made sense to you. But starting at the emotional regulation and choosing to manage your emotions differently, you're now able to see different areas. Maybe that's like discernment. Whereas, like before, if you did not have that emotional regulation, if you did not work on your emotions, you may not look at having discernment as something necessary or as important as it is. So, somebody who has self trust looks like somebody who does not seek external validation from others when making decisions or trying to do something for themselves. They trust their intuition, they are okay with uncertainty, they have boundaries, and they take responsibility without self doubt. I want to talk about takes responsibility without self doubt for a minute because I feel like this shows up in so many people's lives when it comes to self trust, and it has shown up in my life for a very long time. And some things I still am trying to navigate this through because it's so easy to have doubt in yourself when it comes to you trying something new, learning something new, indulging in a new area, or even when you start to change who you are as a person. We grow up, we have these identities, we meet people, and these people know us for being a specific version of ourselves. We have people who we've met in high school, in our early adult years, even our middle school and elementary years, who may have come into our lives, met a version of us, and then left. And to them, we may still exist in their mind as that version. When you start to become older and you start creating an identity for yourself, you're in that identity for a while, and sometimes it can make you think, like, this is just who I am. And you start to have self doubts around the areas that you feel like you can step into certain rooms and certain topics, maybe even certain people. You feel like you can't connect or engage or be a part of these conversations or in these spaces because that's not who you've always been. You may have interest around it, you may be curious about it, but you have self doubt because you're like, I don't fit in this place. It's so interesting because when we get into a different place, a different area from when we start growing and evolving and becoming these new versions of ourselves, it's almost as if like we battle with two sides. We have this side of ourselves that everybody knew and loved and know us for, and then we have this new version of ourselves where we're starting to gravitate a little bit more towards, and we know it's a healthier version of us. We know it's better for us, but there's still a part of us that yearns for that old self because it's who you were always known to be and who you were loved to be as. A lot of that comes down to that subconscious belief in self trust and trusting yourself that, like, I'm making the right decision to go to this new version that I've evolved into and that I've become versus you having doubts that like, oh, maybe this is who I am and this is who I've always been and should be and continue to be because this is the version of me that people know and love, and I shouldn't step outside of these boxes or these barriers that I created for myself in this identity. And I feel like it can be so hard to have that self trust to step into that new in person, that new version of yourself and really embody it because of how many opinions and voices we hear every single day. We're not just interacting with the people that we see in person, our families, or our close friends, our classmates, teammates, coworkers, maybe even the person that you're just seeing at the grocery store and saying hi and bye to as they check you out. Like, it is no longer just those small interactions that we have, but the interactions that we also experience online. There's so many opinions. There's a lot of people voicing, what is wrong and what is right through opinionated states, but also just from their perspectives, their morals, their beliefs. And it can be so easy to get caught up in like what is right and what is wrong. And that kind of, I feel like, strips us away from our self trust at times because you may trust yourself into having a specific opinion about something or having, you know, a belief in some area, and then you hear somebody online saying that it's wrong and that's not how you should live life. And if you're living life this way, you're missing out on X, Y, and Z. And then you start to question yourself. You start to question the life that you're living, the decisions that you're making, the person that you are, and even maybe question yourself on this new journey to trying to become the person that you want to be. Is this person actually attainable? As we navigate in this life and we try to figure out what works best for us, we come across so many people that have things that worked best for them. Now, if you have been on my channel and you've listened to any of my podcasts and my videos, I always speak about how healing in itself is such a unique and personal journey because what works for somebody else isn't always going to work for you. And also, our bodies are so different. Yes, we all have bodily functions that tend to function the same. However, people have different triggers. Like, dairy, for an example, works in some people, dairy doesn't work in other people. And it's like, that's exactly how it is for healing. So when people are telling you, like, oh, I did this and it changed my life, I think it is a beautiful thing for people to speak about their testimonies and what has worked for them because you may just come across that person that has a very similar experience to yours, and just by you telling them what you figured out can help them figure or lessen, the deep dive of trying to discover what is wrong with them or what their experience or how to heal or fix something. So I'm always here for a testimony. I feel like everybody should always state their testimonies. I'm also on the flip side where I too have fell victim to scrolling online and hearing certain things that work best for somebody and thinking that, oh, maybe this is the way for me. And then I just waste time or I don't end up getting the same results or the same benefits as they did from it. And it just goes to show that, like, having self trust and knowing yourself and setting firm on your beliefs, but also not doubting that where you're going is in the right direction and just continuing to trust your journey is so important because it doesn't allow you to be so swayed and convinced by, what has worked for other people or the directions that other people are taking. I always think about how as a society, we tend to fall a lot into trends and to follow other people, and I'm all down for a trend. I love a trend. I really do. I have always loved social media culture, like from a very young age. I was on social media and just like every other kid in the world, like you get to see a lot of like the celebrities and the influencers and how I just looking back the evolution of how social media has evolved. Like I always say I was born in the right generation. Like I was born in the right generation because I love the evolution of social media from when we first got on it back in 2012 to now. It is insane. Although now I do see there is some darkness that has definitely taken over the platform in some areas. And it's so important to have that discernment and that self trust to be like, oh no, I'm not listening to this, or I am listening to this, and this is something good for me, or this aligns with my journey and where I'm currently going. Because you deserve to evolve and you deserve to go along your healing journey in the best way that supports you and to not feel discouraged by not feeling like you have the right information or the right direction, and also feeling discouraged by the anxiety that may take place when you're like, am I doing this right? Am I not? I think a healing journey should be beautiful. I was going to say fun, but I don't think it's fun at all. But I think it should be beautiful and there should be, you're grateful for where you're at, and it shouldn't just be a horrible all the time. However, it can get rough and it can get ugly, and I know that for sure. And sometimes it does need to get a little bit crazy before it gets beautiful, just like with anything in life. I'm still finding areas of myself where I'm like, okay, one day I'm rocking with this, and then the next day it's like, oh, actually, I do not agree with that. And I try to be as careful as I can when I do speak to you guys on here because there are some areas of myself that I feel like are constantly changing and changing rapidly. And for an example, I have been listening to this podcast called A Really Good Cry. I love the host so much, and the guests that she brings on are so amazing. And she is a plant based eater. She creates these like amazing plant based meals. And I have embarked a little bit. I've done a little bit of plant based eating when I had first started my healing journey because I was healing my body, and it did wonders for me. I loved it so much. But then, as I continued this journey and did more research about health and nutrition, I realized that there was a lot of nutrients that I was depleting myself of by not eating meat. And I didn't know how to do it properly through a plant-based diet. I was really confused. It was a new world, and I was doing little things here and there, but then I was like, okay, something is off. My body was feeling a little bit off. I was like, I got to get back to eating meat. And honestly, I kind of had already healed what I needed to heal with through my plant-based eating, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. As soon as I went back to eating meat and eating dairy and all the things, I found myself experiencing some nutritional issues again. So I went on an anti-inflammatory diet, and I loved the anti-inflammatory diet, but it was rough. It was like no dairy, no meat, no seed oils, no gluten, no soy. It was really rough. And obviously at the time when you don't have a lot of knowledge on foods and meals that you can make, it can be hard. Like it's so hard to try to figure that out. So I did that for about a month. I've never felt better. My skin was never clear. It was amazing. But then I went back to eating regularly, and battled a lot with like gut issues and just like skin problems. It was hard to navigate because I was like, I don't want to eat plant based because I hated the meals and I was like not looking forward to anything I was eating like all day, and it was just like rough. I hated the anti-inflammatory diet because I was like standing in for the aisles for so long trying to figure out what I can eat and what I can't eat, and I just found this rhythm with just like eating another whole foods diet. I stayed really far away from like any processed foods, seed oils, and everything that I still maintain to this day. A few weeks ago, I was feeling really called to cut out dairy, and I was like, why? Like, Lord, why are we cutting out dairy? Like, what is going on? And I ended up cutting it out this past week, maybe like past 2 weeks, and my skin has been clearing up so much better. And then I listened to this podcast, A Really Good Cry, and now I'm kind of like learning about plant based eating again. And I'm like, is this something I may get back into? I don't know. And I think that comes with discovering yourself and your identity. It's like you flip between different things and mentalities, maybe beliefs, opinions, whatever it is that you're discovering along this journey, you're allowed to change it. But I think sometimes when we do change a lot and like we say one thing, we're kind of like subconsciously develop this mentality that we don't know what we're talking about or we don't know what we're doing. And that's not true. And also to other people, it may be deemed that way, but it's not true. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to move one way one day and be like, I don't like that I had this behavior. I don't like that I was this person. I'm going to change that today. And leaning into the fact that you're allowed to do that will give you approval to be able to be like, no, I trust myself to make this decision and to lean into this new belief, moral identity that I'm trying to adapt. And it will be for the better of myself. A lot of the times, too, I think with self trust, a lot of people subconsciously will battle with shame or guilt in those areas of the person that they were, or when they do, try to make decisions and maybe they make the wrong one, or when they have to go through a very hard lesson and they're kind of like, oh, why did I do that? Or why did I make this decision? What arises is shame and guilt, but being able to just like forgive yourself as quick as the Lord forgives you is so important because it frees yourself from the shackles of feeling any type of anxiousness attached to that situation or any type of wrongdoings that the enemy is going to try to use over your head to keep you trapped in that cycle and that mentality. It's so much more freeing when you forgive yourself. And forgiving yourself allows you to be like, no, hey, like, that was a lesson that I learned. I learned it now, and I trust myself that I'm never going to get back into this situation. The opposite of self trust looks like reassurance, maybe overthinking, betraying yourself, constantly feeling fear or anxiety around like, oh, I've made the bad decision, needing external permission, maybe betraying a promise that you kept to yourself, or ignoring your intuition or your body signs. Those red flags that your body is trying to tell you, or the red flags that you are feeling or that you notice, even if they're small and you're like, I can get over this by tomorrow. No, clip it where you need to clip it, trust yourself, and know that you are going to be able to survive regardless of what the outcome is. Learning how to trust yourself is one of those things where it's like you just have to continuously, repeatedly do it. Stay consistent with it. I always talk about how some of these mentalities and these behaviors, when you do change your mental perspective on a lot of things, it just comes with exercising that muscle to be able to do that. So self trust is definitely falls into that category. When you start to continuously show up for yourself for something, it is so different. It changes the ball game. I like to say start small. If you're like, okay, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to go for a walk, you better make sure that you put that phone down in 10 minutes. Don't say, oh, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to go for a walk. And then it hits 10:55. And then now all of a sudden you got to wait until 11 o'clock until you go for your walk. No, don't do that anymore. When it hits that 10-minute mark, you jump up and you do the things that you need to do. You continue to stick to your word, show up for yourself in certain areas. If you're like, hey, every Sunday I meal prep and I clean my room and I clean my house and I deep dive and I do the things I need to do it every Sunday. Show up for yourself consistently. Those little small things, those little tiny small tasks are going to lean you more into trusting yourself with any other thing in life. And that includes decision making. It includes you being able to know how to control yourself and understand yourself more, because you're not going to be consciously thinking like, oh, I never do this for myself, so I know it's not going to happen. Like, no, you're going to have that belief and that faith. It's going to be stronger than ever. Honor your intuition. Listen to your intuition. If there's one thing I will tell you that I have learned about an intuition, it is that it is very, very, very quiet. It is not loud. It doesn't shout fear or anxiousness towards you. It is so quiet. It's just that little nudge right before you make a decision. It's like that little nudge. That's why sometimes I say don't dwell on this decision for too long. You already know which decision you should be making. When you have to battle back and forth of, oh, should I do this, should I not, should I do this, should I not, it's typically because there's a desire over an obedience type of situation, and that obedience is usually not aligning with your desire and what you want to do. So you're kind of like, oh, I don't know. Your intuition is telling you like you've already had the answer from the jump. You need to lean into that. But if you do end up making the wrong decision, you're not also going to shame yourself for getting yourself into that position. You're going to listen. You're going to be like, okay, I take note of this lesson and I'm going to apply this lesson for next time. So I will never again be in this situation, but I'm not going to shame myself for it. I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm evolving, and that's a part of the process. Developing discernment, healing self betrayal patterns. If you've watched my video on self betrayal, you probably are familiar with some of the areas in there, and what that looks like and how that may show up in your life or in other people's lives. So important. Self betrayal, I feel like, is the complete opposite of self trust. It is so easy to get into harmful situations in the long run when you are constantly self betraying yourself, which is the same with self trust. When you don't trust yourself, you fall victim to manipulation, chronic anxiety, maybe indecision, even like putting yourself in danger, like in dangerous situations, you fall victim to that. And it's only going to prevail and get worse in the long run. So it's so important that you clip it where it needs to be clipped at. And if you have thought at the beginning of this video, when I was explaining, like, hey, these little patterns that are showing up, the little things of you telling yourself, I'm going to do it tomorrow, or even like you being indecisive about certain things, there's a good chance that you don't trust yourself. And learning how to trust yourself is going to help you and prevent you from so many hard lessons in dangerous situations in areas that can potentially prolong your growth and evolution in the area that you're looking for. People who are self trusting in themselves are so resilient. They're emotionally stable. They're discerning. They're confident. They have boundaries. They make decisions with peace. And that is everything that we want when we're trying to grow closer to abundance. Abundance is all around us. It is us. We were made in the Lord's image. The Lord has provided abundance for us in every area of our life. It is just our responsibility to come into agreement with it and to fully align with it. I always encourage you, especially with this topic, to spend time with yourself, get to know your body, sit in your spirit, sit in the ways that you speak to yourself and that your body speaks to you, to understand yourself. Knowing yourself is so, so important. And it's going to be the first thing that you start to discover on this journey of evolution and growth and healing. And it's a beautiful journey. I think it is so nice and beautiful to know how to protect yourself and to love yourself better than anybody else could. And obviously, always with the Lord, because the Lord is just pure love. And when you're feeling like you need that extra source, you need the source. He is there for you. But spend time with yourself. Do it in prayer, do it in meditation, do it sitting in silence, looking at the wall. Do it however you need to. Get to know yourself so that you can trust yourself, because trusting yourself, it's going to save you a lot of turbulence along this journey and a lot of saved lessons that you don't want to put yourself in, because it can only damage your subconscious or your body even more. You don't want to put yourself in traumatic situations. So, because that takes a lot of healing, it takes even more. Again, it takes a longer period of time to do that. We're raising our vibration every day through these practices that we're learning and through the ways that we can become whole within ourselves and heal ourselves, our mind, body, and spirit, so that way we can live in abundance, be abundant full, and continue to pass the abundance to others through life, love, light, beauty, all the amazing things, self-trust. But I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I will be back to see you in another one. Bye.